Originally, I planned to continue discussing electronic warfare today. However, I unexpectedly dug myself into a hole by promising some online followers to talk about the thousand-handed Guanyin system. To my surprise, after researching all day yesterday, I found only about 3 related articles, both domestically and internationally. That excludes self-media, of course. There's barely any detailed information available. It felt like I'd hit a bottleneck in life, so I decided to take a break and browse some financial news. To my astonishment, while reading an analysis report from a listed company, I came across some intriguing data disclosed in their report. I won't name the company, but here's a quote directly from it. In 2018, C4IS, our expenditure accounted for 12% of China's defense budget, amounting to an estimated 132.84 billion yuan. The brokerage firm projects that by 2025, this will rise to 220.365 billion yuan, with an average annual growth of 12.9 to 9 billion yuan. The market for military electronic information equipment, a crucial part of the C4ISR system, has enormous growth potential. Wow, this company is bold. Their market analysis report outright shares these figures. Since this data was disclosed by a company under the supervision of the China Securities Regulatory Commission, it likely doesn't count as a leak. But still, it gives us an idea of how advanced our thousand-handed Guanyin system has become. You see, the figures I just mentioned are from 2018. Our country spends over 100 billion yuan annually on this system, and by 2025, it will be over 200 billion yuan a year. Some people might say, the government is spending taxpayers' money so lavishly. Wouldn't it be better to give that 200 billion to us? Honestly, it's easy to understand why some people feel that way, as there are always people dreaming of the government directly handing out money. But if you understand a bit of economics, you'll realize this money is being spent within the country at stimulating consumption. When the government talks about stimulating consumption, they're not talking about us as individuals. They mean enterprises. As individuals, no matter how much we splurge, how much could we really spend in a day? Even if you're eating and drinking nonstop, or buying phones, how many could you buy in a single day? Real domestic demand comes from corporate purchases, and in economics, this is known as the Purchasing Managers' Index (PMI). When the PMI goes up and companies spend more, employment increases. When more people are employed, they can go out and spend money, whether it's on clothes, street food, or tipping at bars. That's how you get a positive economic cycle. Wait, we were talking about military affairs, and now I've veered off into economics. Let's get back on track. About that thousand-handed Guanyin system. Following this thread, I found another analysis report from the Ministry of Commerce's Investment Promotion Agency. Their 2020 forecast estimated that by 2025, defense informatization expenditures would reach 251.3 billion yuan, accounting for 40% of defense equipment spending. The report predicted significant opportunities for growth in the military electronic information industry, with a huge potential market. I won't keep reading the whole thing, as it would sound like I'm advertising for the brokerage firm. But I wanted to provide these figures to show just how massive China's investment in informatization for the military is. This thousand-handed Guanyin system is something being built with enormous funding. It's bound to be powerful. Later, I found an article from 2008 on a US website. It was 15 years old, and the original text said, China is also developing its own C4KIRS system. Its functions include searching, detecting, tracking, target identification, decision-making, sustained target recognition, and target engagement, as well as battle damage assessment. I noticed the extra K in their system name compared to the USS, and after researching, I found out that the K stands for kill, making it sound quite aggressive. Americans often describe foreign systems as more powerful than their own. The C4 stands for command, control, communications, and computers. So, C4 means these 4 key areas, and the K stands for kill. The I is for intelligence, R for reconnaissance, and S for surveillance. Put together, C4KIRS essentially means a kill chain. Notice how the Americans label our system as being designed specifically to kill, whereas their equivalent system is called a data link control system. Interestingly, the Americans admitted that China's system, back in 2008, was still in its early stages and not yet capable of full coverage. It was primarily applied to the Navy, particularly submarines, which seemed unusual to them. They couldn't understand why China was focusing on the Navy instead of the Air Force, where such systems would be more effective. I then came across a 2015 article that also discussed the thousand-handed Guanyin system. This article mentioned that China's system had already achieved joint operational capabilities, specifically designed for a potential conflict in the Taiwan Strait. It said that the system had over 1,000 sensors, capable of monitoring more than 2,000 targets and handling over 800 combat units simultaneously. Intelligence also indicated that the system primarily linked with unmanned equipment, such as drones stationed on islands and underwater unmanned submarines. Combined with reconnaissance satellites, it forms a three-dimensional networked reconnaissance and strike system, covering the entire Asia-Pacific region. This 2015 report helped me understand why China initially deployed the thousand-handed Guanyin system on submarines. Since we are not currently in a state of war, it would have been difficult to collect real combat data if the system had been deployed on the Army or Air Force. The best place to gather real-world data was in the South China Sea, where military activity is most intense. Continuous data collection in such a high-tension region allows for ongoing adjustments and improvements to the system. Back in 2015, Americans were already starting to feel the pressure. That same year, an American website, let's say a top-tier American media outlet, reported a study from the 2049 Project Institute revealing that in the disputed waters of the South China Sea, Chinese drones were a common sight. Intelligence reports suggested that China was rapidly developing drones, both by investing in domestic production and by illegally acquiring foreign drone technology. I mean, look at these jerks, they're painting us as if we're thieves, claiming we stole their drone technology. But let's not dwell on that, moving on. China is primarily using for types of drones in the South China Sea, the S-100, the AS-N209, the BZK-005, and the Attack-1. The first one mentioned is the F-100. Developed by Austria's Schiebel company in 2003, it's an unmanned helicopter with a flight endurance of only 4 hours and a payload of 50 kilograms. Frankly, it's trash. This thing would have no market in China. You can't even use it for crop dusting. Americans are really grasping at straws here. The second one they mentioned is the AS-N209 drone. This one is made in China, but to be honest, it's not very popular. It's mostly sold to countries like Egypt. Its performance is just average. For example, it has a flight endurance of 10 hours, a maximum takeoff weight of 300 kilograms, and a top speed of 180 kilometers per hour. It can interface with a data link and has a maximum operational radius of 200 kilometers. It's equipped with optical reconnaissance systems, high-definition cameras, laser rangefinders, target illumination systems, infrared detection systems, synthetic aperture radar, and a ground control system. One special feature of this drone is that when it reaches its 10-hour limit, you don't need to worry about it. It will return to base on its own, just like the DJI drones we buy with their one-button return function. The ground control station can then easily switch to another drone. So, if you have 2 of these drones, you can ensure 20 hours of continuous operation. If you have 3, you can basically have round-the-clock coverage. The biggest advantage of this drone is that it's cheap and has very low logistical requirements. On a global scale, it would easily rank among the top 5, but in China, it's nothing special, just a low-tier product. That's why we usually sell it to third-world countries. The article also mentions the BZK-005. This is a medium-altitude reconnaissance drone made in Harbin, often dubbed China's Global Hawk. It's primarily used for reconnaissance and intelligence gathering. This model has been around since 2006, already in service since then. But within China, it's also considered nothing special. However, in May 2023, it achieved something remarkable by conducting a large-scale crossing of the Taiwan Strait median line. Look up what happened in May 2023, and you'll know what I'm talking about. These drones crossed the median line in large numbers because they are cheap, allowing for swarm tactics. Lastly, we have the Attack-1 drone. This model is China's domestic version of the Winglong drone, which was originally an export product. The Winglong was initially intended for foreign buyers, but after seeing how well it sold, China decided to produce a domestic version. The Attack 1 is 14 meters long, weighs about 1.1 tons, and can carry 100 kilograms of small, precision-guided weapons. It's equipped with a data link and a multi-mode navigation and positioning system, as well as a multispectral, all-weather electro-optical turret, giving it impressive situational awareness. I've talked about situational awareness in previous shows. The Attack 1 typically flies at an altitude of around 5 kilometers, with a range of 4,000 kilometers and a maximum endurance of 20 hours. Its overall performance is on par with the US Predator, but our export price is only $1 million, which means the production cost is likely no more than $300,000, roughly the price of a high-end SUV. On the global arms market, this is dirt cheap. Think about it. What else can your SUV do besides drive? This thing flies in the sky and gives you control over the airspace. Yet, in China, it's considered third-rate and doesn't stand out in the crowded Chinese drone market. Anyway, that's a brief overview of the 4 drones mentioned in the article. The article goes on to claim that these drones have excellent performance and have already established a significant advantage in the South China Sea. It says that countries like Vietnam, the Philippines, even Japan and Malaysia are all under surveillance by these drones, creating a great sense of fear among the people of Asia. Besides drones, China has also reportedly deployed hundreds of underwater unmanned submarines in the area. These underwater drones, combined with large-scale drone swarms, are said to be controlled by China's Thousand Hands Guanyin system, posing a deadly threat to the US Navy. Honestly, after reading this article, I felt like we were being portrayed as some kind of unbeatable force. If this weren't written by a globally recognized media outlet, I would have thought it was just some self-congratulatory post from a Chinese social media account. Should I believe it or not? It's funny, right around that time, China released a report about our Nanchang destroyer, the first 10,000-ton destroyer of the O55 class, taking on the mission to lead the construction of a world-class navy. The article was pure propaganda. The wording was so flowery, but it lacked any real substance. Why were all the top Chinese media outlets suddenly praising the Nanchang? Well, you might remember that there was a military exercise in the South China Sea at that time. I mentioned it in a previous show. It was mainly in response to the US-Philippines joint military exercise. After that exercise ended, we began praising the Nanchang, which indicates that something must have happened during that time. But what exactly happened, we don't know. The article vaguely mentions the Nanchang being engaged in a back-and-forth standoff with foreign naval forces and tracking foreign aircraft. When I see these vague reports, especially ones that are syndicated across all major media outlets, I get curious. So, I started digging. Turns out, this whole thing was connected to the Thousand Hands Guanyin system. Now, if you read self-media reports online, everything seems foggy. If you rely on official media, you won't get any clearer answers. It feels like they're talking about a standoff with a foreign carrier group, but then the article mentions training exercises, 1 minute talking about elbows, the next about hip bones. It leaves you feeling like they didn't say much of anything, and it leaves you frustrated. Why does it leave you frustrated? Well, the report claims that during the Nanchang's training deployment, foreign warships repeatedly interfered with our formation, posing a great threat to us, and that we had to issue several warnings and eventually drive them away. After reading it, you'd think we were getting bullied. And it gets worse. The article even claims that foreign aircraft frequently flew low over our warships. I was stunned. If foreign aircraft flew low over our O55 destroyer, that would be a massive humiliation. And yet, according to this report, after such an incident, we just gave out an award to comfort ourselves. Clearly, the journalist who wrote this doesn't understand military affairs. If a foreign aircraft had flown low over our O55 destroyer, it would have made headlines worldwide. Any military aircraft is equipped with high-definition cameras, and photos taken during such an overflight would have gone viral online. Foreign websites would be all over it. So, I don't know what kind of report this is. It's evident the journalist and editor have no military knowledge. They probably interviewed a few sailors, asked a few questions, and pieced together a story based on guesswork. Military-savvy journalists are rare, I guess, but it's not just the journalists. Many self-media outlets jumped on the bandwagon to exploit the trending topic. The faster you report, the more traffic you get. It's hard to find a content creator who, like me, takes the time to research the whole story, waits for the heat to die down, and then comments. But that's the reality of today's click-driven media environment. To figure out what really happened, I dug into the Japan Self-Defense Forces website and other foreign media sources, and I finally got to the bottom of it. The Nanchang receiving an award was not about just one incident, it's the result of a series of missions carried out since 2021. The journalist's so-called report just lumped everything together. Anyway, let's stop talking about that propaganda piece. Let's get straight to the point what exactly happened. First, we need to talk about the Nanchang ship. The Nanchang, hull number 101, was officially commissioned in January 2021. It's the lead ship of the Type 055 destroyers. What does it mean to be the lead ship? It means it's the first of its kind. In fact, it was launched in June 2017 and went through various trials and adaptations over 3 years before officially entering service in 2021. Since its commissioning, the Nanchang has been very active. In March 2021, it passed through the Tsushima Strait, conducting its first long-range training mission after commissioning, which caused quite a stir especially in foreign media, particularly in Japan and the United States. Why did it cause such a stir? Well, let's consider where the Tsushima Strait is. You can see it on the map. It's the narrow stretch between the southernmost point of Korea and Japan. The strait is very close, with the narrowest point being only 41 kilometers wide, and the water depth ranges from 50 to 100 meters, with the deepest part being just 131 meters, making it a shallow sea with complex underwater conditions, filled with reefs and shoals. Now imagine the Nanchang passing through this strait. It could be detected by 3 countries, first Japan, then Korea, and naturally, the United States as well. The narrowest point is just 41 kilometers wide, which means that when crossing the Tsushima Strait, the ship would be just 20 kilometers from Japan at its closest point. At that distance, you could see the shore with binoculars, and it's well within the range of the ship's guns. Moreover, there are several islands in the middle of the Tsushima Strait, such as Jeju Island and Tsushima Island, both of which have military bases. So, when the Nanchang, a Type 055 destroyer, crossed the Tsushima Strait, it was almost as if it were entering Japan's backyard. You can imagine the reaction in Japan and Korea. Due to time constraints, I didn't check Korea's reaction, but I did look at Japan's. According to records from Japan's self-defense forces, they were shocked by the appearance of the Nanchang. Since the First Sino-Japanese War, China hadn't come this way. Moreover, the Tsushima Strait is a crucial part of the first island chain, which the United States uses as a containment line for China. So Japan sent its Kongu-class destroyer to intercept. The Kongu class is equipped with the Aegis system and is the core of Japan's 4 escort flotillas, each led by a Kongu-class destroyer. In March 2021, Japan's Kongu, part of the 2nd escort flotilla, intercepted our Nanchang. So how does the Kongu class measure up? Can we beat it? Keep listening to find out. According to Japan's self-defense forces, as soon as our Nanchang appeared, their Kongu class destroyer followed. Japan is very familiar with our Type 055 destroyer, even though the Nanchang had only been in service for less than 3 months. They've been monitoring it closely, collecting a lot of data. Now, they finally had a chance to see it in action and wanted to test its capabilities. The Kongu attempted to intercept the Nanchang by cutting across its path from the right front, forcing it to slow down or change course. This maneuver would allow Japan to collect data on the Nanchang's turning radius, agility, and stability. However, to their surprise, the Nanchang simply accelerated and passed through before the Kongu could fully execute its maneuver. The Japanese were stunned. A 12,000-ton warship just sped past like that. Later, they analyzed it and found that our Type 055 is equipped with 4 domestically produced CGT-500 gas turbines, with a total power output of 152,000 horsepower. To put this into perspective, the French aircraft carrier Charles de Gaulle, which is over 40,000 tons and nuclear-powered, has a maximum output of 84,000 horsepower. Our 10,000-ton destroyer has nearly double that power. Some may find this hard to believe, questioning the quality of Chinese engines, but the facts speak for themselves. The Kongu-class destroyer, which is essentially an American Arleigh Burke-class destroyer, is powered by four General Electric LM250 gas turbines with a total output of 100,000 horsepower. That's more than the Charles de Gaulle, and it's understandable given that the Arleigh Burke class is America's top-tier destroyer. Japan relied on these state-of-the-art ships to feel confident in their military power, but now, with the Nanchang's superior power, they were caught off guard. Despite their best efforts, the Kangoo couldn't keep up, which was a huge blow to Japan. Historically, one of the reasons we lost in the First Sino-Japanese War was because Japan's ships, like the Jeongchang, were faster and more powerful. Realizing they couldn't catch up, Japan's Kangoo reported the Nanchang's passage through the Tsushima Strait to the Sea-4 system, which is controlled by the United States. Japan's self-defense forces operate under the command of the U.S., so the Sea-4 system directed F-15s to intercept, but they were forced to return due to strong electromagnetic interference, likely from a high-tech surveillance aircraft accompanying the Nanchang. This demonstrates that China's integrated sea air operational capabilities have reached a high level. The Nanchang passed through the Tsushima Strait, and by the time the Sea-4 system could respond, it was already heading back. This was just the first time in 2021 that the Nanchang passed through the Tsushima Strait, creating a global sensation. Later, in May, the Nanchang joined the Liaoning aircraft carrier group for training in the Pacific, once again breaking through the first island chain. In August, the Nanchang sailed alone to the waters near Alaska, this time right up to the USS doorstep. In October, the Nanchang participated in a joint exercise with Russia and then returned through the Tsushima Strait. In December, it again escorted the Liaoning into the Pacific for another round of training, passing through the Miyako Strait. In just its first year of service, the Nanchang wreaked havoc on the first island chain. The most shocking thing for Japan wasn't just the Nanchang's capabilities but the fact that China's fleet had such detailed knowledge of the seas and routes, navigating them as if they were their own backyard. This is just what happened in 2021. Do you think the US will easily give up the first island chain? In 2022, the US set up a comprehensive trap in the Western Pacific, waiting for us to fall into it. The big showdown came in May 2022 when the Nanchang escorted the Liaoning, accompanied by several other ships, through the Miyako Strait. This was a full-scale confrontation between the USS Sea-4 system and China's Sea Air Integrated Combat Platform, the Thousand-Handed Cannon System. Who came out on top? Stay tuned for the next segment.